And we are live, guys. Welcome to another live stream from the Women of High Value channel. My name is Joseph Darling. Today we're talking about how to tackle one of the biggest challenges the world has ever seen. Poverty, okay? It started from the very beginning and it is still here until this day, and we need to find a way to solve that problem once and for all. We can't afford to be poor anymore. And I want to come to a point in time where there is no poor among us. That's the goal. So let's start with the premise, the fundamental beliefs that we have on this channel as part of the Men of High Value and Women of High Value movement. We need to have these set in stone first. If you don't believe these, you need to work on that, because that's a precursor to finding the solution to this humongous problem that affects hundreds of millions of people. Let me just see that the stream is working. It is working. Awesome. The three things are: all people are inherently good. All people are inherently good. Does that mean that some people, don't do stupid things, or that some people, don't do things to deceive others or to hurt others, maybe even on purpose, etc., etc.? Of course, there's horrible things happening in the world today, and we can hear about it on the news and social media all day long if we want to. Okay, and I recommend that you don't, because in fact, those things that are horrible in the world is just a very small fraction. It's so small compared to all of the good things that happen all around the world. All people are inherently good. The only problem is that people, what's the saying? Hurt people hurt people. So we end up actually, because of all of the hurt that we've gone through our lives and the lack of trust that we've had in other people, because people make mistakes, and since they make mistakes, they've lost our trust, and so can I trust more people, can I trust this person, etc., etc. Over time, we become non-trustworthy as well. Dang, I need the battery. Okay, we're gonna take a short break already. All people are inherently good. Let's get back to business. Number 2, the world has plenty of resources. The world has plenty of resources and to spare. There is so much abundance on this planet, it is ridiculous. And especially when it comes to food, because it's sustainable growth. We can literally plant something and it grows, and then it produces 50-fold, 100-fold, 1,000-fold of that one seed or few seeds that we planted in the ground. And then all of those fruits actually have seeds of their own, and we can produce more. It's ridiculous how much abundance you can actually create. The only lack there is motivation, okay? Motivation and desire from the aspect of the people who need to plant those seeds and then harvest those seeds, and then be able to transport that to all of the world. Okay, that's really all there is to it. There is so much abundance. And not only in terms of food, but in terms of what our potential is and what we can actually do if we desire to find solutions to our problems. There's a solution, okay? Which brings me to my third one. The fundamental belief of, if you give a man a fish, you'll feed him for a day. If you teach a man how to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. It's such a powerful phrase, because that is what's needed for poverty. Handouts or foreign aid or whatever it is that we just pump money at people, okay? All that stuff, it's temporary. It's not gonna last. You know what lasts? When someone makes a decision that they're workers, okay? The vast majority of people are able to do this. That they decide, they make a decision that they're going to be workers for the rest of their lives because they're fired up about it. Okay? Because it brings them reward, it brings them fruits of their labor, etc., etc., okay? So we want to get to the point where all people have the ability to sustain themselves. Because if we don't, then there's always going to be an aspect of we need to take from some people and give to others. Now, obviously, there will be people who are incapable of providing for themselves in this world that we live in today in terms of diseases and crippled and etc., old people, etc., right? And children as well. We want to get to the point where they have an automatic income stream that's sustainable, okay? Where we don't have to steal from others, but where people, because of the warmth of their hearts, remember from the first one, all people are inherently good. If those people that are inherently good have a lot of resources, then the people that are also inherently good, who need those resources because they can't survive on their own, there will be someone who helps them out as they ask. Okay? But those are emergency situations. That's not the norm. That's not the normal aspect of things. Right? So we need to come to the point where everyone takes personal responsibility for self-sustaining or self-sustainment. Okay, so that's number 3 fundamental belief. And number 4 is the aspect that if time heals all wounds, time will solve all problems. Okay? Time will solve all problems because there's always a solution. We have not been placed on this planet without solutions to our problems. They're right here. And we simply have to observe and understand what those solutions are or what the problems are and then find solutions to those problems. And they're available. We would not be placed down here without possible solutions to our long-term problems. And there are long-term solutions so that we never have to face those old problems ever again. It's kind of like tying your shoelaces or learning how to ride a bike. I'm teaching my kids how to ride a bike these days. It's very fun. Once they learn how to do it, they never have to learn again. It's done. In the same way, we have to come to the point where the problems that we solve, they're solved forever because we've learned. We've learned how to tie the shoelace. We've learned how to ride the bike. We've learned how to solve any problem, including poverty. It's solved. So whenever that begins to creep up again, we know what the solution is. Oh, we do this. Okay? So those are the 4 fundamental beliefs that you need to have going into this video. If you don't believe that, hey, I'm sorry. That's a problem. But, let me just run quickly through them. Why it's beneficial to believe these things. Number 1, all people are inherently good. How does it serve you to believe that people are inherently evil? I just had this conversation with the Christian dude, a red pill guy, okay? Who basically was saying that, if you believe in God, then you must also believe that all men or all people are inherently evil. And I'm like, no. It's because I believe in God, okay, or believe in, our Father, our Maker, etc., etc., because I believe in some superior power, I believe that everyone's inherently good, okay? So it's just ridiculous to believe that everyone's inherently evil because it doesn't serve you. It doesn't serve you at all. If you go out there believing that everyone's out there to help you, you live a fantastic life. If you go out there believing that everyone's out there to get you and to hurt you and to take your stuff, you live a horrible life. All people are inherently good. Sometimes people are simply, a lot of times, maybe, they're just ignorant. They're just ignorant on the subject, and they are on their journey of progression. And we're just doing our very best to help each other, right? Plenty of resources. It's just a given. It's so easy to understand that one. And, teach a man how to fish. And time solves all problems. Okay, let's move on. How do we solve this issue? I'll tell you why. I'll tell you how. Family. That's it. Okay? If families function, it's the most important unit in society. Families need to work. If we're going to end poverty, world poverty all over the world, it has to do with male and female dynamics. That's it. Okay? We're solving the biggest problem on planet Earth. It's easier to send people to the moon than to solve the male and female dynamic, or so we thought. In fact, once we've begun to discover how male and female dynamics work, that was quite simple. I mean, yes, it took us years to discover how the female psyche works, but now that we understand it, dang, it's so obvious. It's insane. So we've got to recognize that if we understand that aspect, the male and female dynamic, and how to make families function beautifully, optimally, and generationally, we have solved the ultimate problem on planet Earth. Families functioning, what happens? Well, they'll be motivated outside their brains to support each other, to provide for each other, to protect each other, to be there for each other, to nurture the kids, bring them up in the right way, whatever that is, and help each other. If families, you're interconnected by blood, okay? You're interconnected in a way for life. You've got mother and a father, and hopefully you've got good relationships with them. You've got siblings. You were raised with them. Hopefully you've got good relationships with them. If you have good relationships in your home, then those relationships last for life. And if they last for life, then you can always help each other whatever problem arrives in your lives. And then you meet someone else who is part of another family, right? And then those families now become interconnected, and then families help each other. Wouldn't it be wonderful if that's how that worked, okay? But there's so many families that don't work. Dysfunctional families is the entire reason for poverty. If the man is not able to provide and protect, that's ignorance. Okay, so he might come from a poor background, never been taught how success works, never been taught how money works, never been taught anything. Okay, so yes, we need education, but we don't need the formal kind, okay? We need the form of education that will help families to provide for themselves. That's it. If we can manage that, then they've learned how to now escape poverty. They simply need to learn some skills, some trade, something that gets them out of the biggest rut. Okay? Families. And if it doesn't work in this generation, the father working and making things happen his entire life, boom, boom, 40, 50, 60 years, and then he has kids and he teaches them what he's learned and then hopes that they learn from his experiences plus their experiences. And guess what? The next generation now has from grandpa plus the father, and then they learn from their own experiences. This is how we've evolved continuously for decades, for eons, for millennia. This is how we evolve. We teach the next generation what we've learned in the past. So we're much better off than the ignorance of the people 100 years ago, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, etc. Could you imagine how little they understood back then? No one could read, okay? There was no information age. They didn't have books. Nothing. Do you know that that's a new invention when you think about the entire grand scheme of things? Right? The printing press. That's one of the most radical inventions ever created. Gutenberg, right? It's insane. Before then, people told stories. Man, it's crazy to think about. But the ignorance of our forefathers have brought us to where we are today. Thank goodness for entrepreneurs and inventions that were created over time. Wow. Okay, they were needed. So we're here at a crossroads. How do we get families to function? Okay, well, what is a family? Father, mother, okay, children. the way that if it doesn't work, okay? If families don't work, because then there's no provision and protection, right? So we get dysfunctional families, half of the people get a divorce, right? The mother and father separate, and even while the kids are small, very often, sometimes, what happens? You know that one time in Norway, it's like 10 years ago or something, I looked at a commercial ad, like big, huge posters, by the metro station, and I looked up and I read it, and it said, "Get a divorce." And I was like, what? Get a divorce with big letters. And I was like, what? Like, who put this up there? And then it said at the bottom, it's good for the economy. And then in even smaller letters, it said, it's good for the economy because, you have to have 2 apartments instead of 1, so real estate value goes up. You need to buy more food, instead of quantity purchases. You make individual purchases, and because of that, you end up buying more stuff, etc. So there's more waste, and there's more. And I was just like, what? This is crazy. I know. The division of families, ridiculous. So what we're trying to do, or what is actually happening, the dysfunction of families is causing these problems. And the biggest problem that it causes is that the father, who used to be the father of the home, but he sucked at it, it seems like, because women don't want to be under his influence anymore. So they moved with feminism, which is okay. There's some good things that have come from feminism, some bad things coming from feminism, okay? But what feminism has brought about is what we have today, is this interesting aspect of big government. Okay, let's talk about that for a second. What role does big government serve, or government for that matter? It's supposed to protect. Okay, that's how it started out as. It's because, if you took let's say a Wild Wild West city, okay, there's no police there, there's no nothing, there's no sheriff, there's no, these are old times. So what you do is you'd build up wealth somehow, you take gold for your services, at the salon as a barber or whatever it is, and so you made money. And you also sometimes needed to be gone from your estate or from your home or from whatever, right? And so as you traveled and also you put your money in the bank maybe to make sure that it's protected so you don't have to bury it underground or whatever happened back then. What was needed? Well, we needed a sheriff. Because if it's the Wild Wild West, then, people can shoot me any time of day. But if we have a sheriff, someone who's skilled at weaponry and someone who can protect and support the law and make sure that everyone is safe. Okay? We need some good sheriffs in town. He had a role. That role went from sheriff, okay, and over time, that his limited ability, it was just to protect the citizens. The moment he stopped protecting the citizens wouldn't want him as a sheriff anymore. This story that I'm telling you guys is in a pamphlet called The Proper Role of Government, by a guy named Ezra Taft Benson. He was a political, what's it called? He was the Minister of Agriculture in the 70s in America, I believe, or 60s, something like that. And that pamphlet or that article is amazing. The Proper Role of Government. So anyway, but that role has expanded massively today with the government that we know today. Okay? Now, the role is not only of protector and massive regulation. It is also a provider. Wait, hold on a second. What's the role of a man again? What's his masculine role? How is it that he fulfills his masculine potential? To protect and to provide. And now we're basically replacing the man's role because, hey, he sucked. And the dissolution of families has caused government to erupt as the father of the home. The government. Now, that would be nice if they did a good job. Plus, if they cared about you, which they don't, right? And they make decisions that affect our lives massively, which is, some things are good. Don't take, but a lot of problems have been caused because of big government. And it is a problem, okay? But we'll talk more about that. Because, hey, we're talking about the goal, right? What's the big goal here of this video? We're ending poverty, okay? That's what we're trying to do here. Government. Let's look at a chart here for a second. What are the expenses of a government? Here. Federal expenditures. I want you guys to get this. Okay, so this is America, 2009. I just found a random article. And they're talking about United States, and it's mostly used for other spending. Okay, I looked down, well, what's other spending? The federal government spends money in several other areas as well. For example, it sends money to the states to fund various programs. Okay, this is social programs, gives cash benefits to the unemployed, social programs. Then there's earmark or pork spending that benefits the residents of a particular congressman's district, blah, blah. Examples include transportation projects, subsidies for local industries, museums, flood control, economic development, etc. Okay, so that's other spending. And then, so that's provision, right? Would you agree? Like, that's nothing to do with protection at all. And then you've got Social Security. Okay, great. That's provision as well. Medicare, Medicaid, provision. And then you've got interest on federal debt. So basically the head of the household, the government, is taking on massive loans to fund their operations. And they're paying debt on that, which we pay through spending. And then lastly, but the most important one, is national defense. Interesting. I don't know which one of these includes schooling, but I'm sure it's probably other spending or Social Security. I'm not sure. One of them. But the point is, national defense I can get behind. Police I can get behind. Okay? You see, we kind of need some sheriff until everyone is obeying the basic laws of nature or laws of humanity, of not stealing from each other, not killing each other, not raping each other, etc., right? But at the time when everyone is living in harmony with each other, we don't need anyone to protect us anymore. Oh, but Joseph, that's impossible. Remember, all people are inherently good. They're simply uneducated, okay? They're simply ignorant on the subject, or they're suffering. So hurt people hurt people. So we got to get to a point where everyone is not hurt. Then we can actually create peace on earth, and then there's no need for government. Right now, there seems to be a good need for government. The problem is, it's so difficult to trust the people that are in power, right? It's way better to be able to trust the man who loves you than to trust politicians who you don't know what they're going to do at any given time. That's my opinion. But let's just see. We're trying to eliminate poverty here. Okay, there's 3 types of taxes. I found this article here. It was quite an interesting one. Let's see. Okay, so it's taxes on what you earn. Okay, so it's individual tax, income tax, tax brackets, blah, 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 corporate income tax, payroll, capital gains taxes, etc. Okay, what we earn. Great. And then it's taxes on what you buy. Interesting. Okay, so sales taxes, gross receipts taxes, value-added taxes, excise taxes, whatever that means. And then you got taxes on things you own. So you made money first, okay? And then you bought stuff. So every time you buy something, you're taxed again on your after-tax dollars. And then if you want to keep some of that money, no, we need to tax that too. You need property taxes, tangible personal property taxes, estate and inheritance taxes, wealth taxes, etc., etc. I calculated that approximately 65 to 70% of what you make in Norway, and that's where I used to live, will go to taxes. So 2/3 of the year, you basically work for the government, which is the father of the household these days, and then you get to keep 1/3 for you as the father of your household, even though your master, the government, is there. So you get to bring some of the money home. But taxes when you make it, taxes when you buy stuff, and then taxes on the left that you've got. So what happens? What's the natural consequence of massively raising taxes? Well, no one has any money because all of it goes to government. Yeah, but then at least you get some stuff in return, right? Well, that would be nice. Did you know that 20%, at least this is a Norway statistic, 20% of the money that the government receives in form of taxes, 20% of that, so of all the taxes that is brought in from this list that you just saw, is spent on collecting the taxes. So just right there, if there was no government that we had to pay government taxes to, 20% would be given back to the population. Okay? And then 80% they tried to spend wisely. Holy crap. Again, we're going back to the subject. What are we trying to solve? We're trying to end world poverty. It's not going to be easy, but one of the things that has to be done is we need to limit government. The bigger the government becomes, the poorer the world becomes. Why? Because you've got the aspect of the private sector, which you're producing things or you're serving people, etc., etc., and people are willing to buy something. So this is a win-win situation happening in the private sector. You're willing to buy something, and so that person gets money, and that person takes that money and then buys other stuff from someone else, and then we create what is called the velocity of money. So suddenly there's value being created, okay? Now what the government does, they don't produce anything. Yeah, you could say that they serve us, but they serve us out of obligation. It's not a win-win situation, okay? We've already paid a lot. And then very often we're met with resistance for receiving the help that we need. Okay, and it kind of sucks, but the people that are helping us out, they don't know us, so they've got to trust that, are you doing actually what you're supposed to do? Do you qualify for this program? Do you this, that, and the other? And it's like back and forth. And sometimes people who don't qualify get money that they don't qualify for, right? So it's a really warped system where people are forced to pay money that is rightfully theirs to the government. Now, Just a quick pause here. I understand that most women are by nature believers of, we need government, we need some form of regulation, and maybe you even have welfare, and but what about the elderly? And blah. I'm getting there, okay? I'm talking about ending world poverty. Government by nature makes us poor because they waste, okay? There's way more waste happening there because they're spending other people's money on stuff that they want to spend money on, okay? So there are people making decisions about your money that's not theirs. Have you ever tried to spend on someone else's money? Okay? I don't know if you've been in that situation before, but like your dad gave you $100 or $50 or whatever. Did you spend that money well? Like, what's the comparison if you actually made the money yourself? Or, you get what I'm saying? Like, you actually take care of it a bit more than if you're spending someone else's money, because you didn't really have to do anything for it, right? Which is nothing wrong with that, by the way. I'm going to get into that at the end. But, do you guys see where I'm coming with? What happens as a result with the father of the household? His power is limited now. It's decreasing. Okay? That's a problem for attraction. Because attraction is based upon a man having power, the ability to do. Well, government strips 2/3 of his ability to do on a yearly basis. Do you know what 2/3 is compounded over time? That's insane. Like, I even heard this. If you work for 50 years at a McDonald's for a regular minimum wage job, 40 hours a week, blah, 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 just normal job, you will make $1 million. So if you think about that, and 60 to 70% of that money goes directly to the government for them to spend the way that they want to spend it, and you keep 30 to 40% of it, do you see how warped that is? Do you feel that you get enough value from the government to give them 60 to 70%? So I'm not saying that we can change this right now, but we can change this over time. If we want to ever come to the point where we solve world poverty, we have to fix that problem. The problem is big government. Because we have to learn to rely on ourselves. Self-reliance is the key. It has to come down to the smallest unit in order for it to be sustainable. Because you'll always run out of other people's money, like Margaret Thatcher says. Okay. What happens as a result of the father losing his earning ability? Well, maybe the wife should go out and make some money. Oh, and so she gets a side hustle, okay? Or she starts a job, or these days, both parents work, right? The father works, the mother works, and the mother very often works a bit harder than the man. It's very interesting how that works. At least this is what's happening these days, is like women get higher education more so than men, and not that that's necessarily a good thing, but they are trying way harder than men are. Because these days men aren't really that motivated. And we'll get into why that is as well. But we've got a problem. We're bringing about more and more socialism, more and more communism as a result of feminine thinking. Femininity is in charge. Matriarchy has taken over, okay? When we lived patriarchy, we basically had the man as the head of the household, but the woman was the next. So she turned the head of the household, but because of status, the man was the big kahuna, and the woman was basically just staring him here and there to make sure that he did what he was supposed to do in her favor. Unfortunately, there was a lot of violence, a lot of domestic violence, a lot of suppression of what women couldn't say what they wanted to say. Women had to control themselves, etc. This was just 50 years ago and has continued for generations, right? From that, since the beginning of time. Now feminism has brought something good about, which is that women can actually express themselves, and now we can actually hear what they're saying and what they feel. But as a result of that, we've got a huge problem with the male and female dynamics in the home, because the woman was already the leader in the home back then, but the man kind of kept control of that by beating her, which is horrible. This is not how a leader works. Like, it's not slave work, okay? But if he wanted positive harmony in the home, and he was that type of guy, which we all should be as men, then he wouldn't beat her, but then the woman would have a lot of control, right? So we come to today and age where women are head of the household still, but there's no domestic violence. Good. But there's a problem because the woman now has even more power in the household than she's ever had before. This is a turnoff for women, not just men. This is a turnoff for women, which means that the woman is together with the low-value man from the beginning. The moment she marries him, she feels that he's low value. The man now gets self-esteem issues as a result, and he gets beaten down and nagged, etc., a lot, because he's failing, and he's struggling, and he's suffering. And this is his fault for not stepping up and not being prepared, not having the finances and not a lot of stuff, right? Before he committed and before they started having kids and before all that stuff. So it's his fault completely. But it's also the system. The system itself is extremely difficult. Because we need to make families work. And what is it that makes families work? Well, we need loyalty. That's number one, okay? If one of the partners give up on the relationship, then the relationship is dissolved, and the kids are affected, but also the parents are affected because now they have, two mothers to their children in their lives that hate each other, or that basically there's issues here and there, etc., or whatever it is, right? There's more problems as a cause of divorce than families that stick together. Now, obviously, there's huge problems in families that stick together as well, and I'd say half of the people who end up sticking together are emotionally divorced, right? So there's this huge problem coming from lack of attraction, okay? Attraction is obsession. That's kind of how I term it, because if you're attracted to someone, you're in love, you'll be like, wow, you just boom, clasp together, you can't get enough of each other, etc., etc. That's in the beginning of the relationship, honeymoon phase, whatever. And this is my expertise. Although, I'm trying, I know that my expertise and sharing that information with the world will be able to help the entire world solve the biggest problems that the world has ever seen and known about. And it will be solved quite easily once people understand how it works. But it takes time to educate people, so I got all the time in the world. Obviously not going to happen in my lifetime, like a lot of the goals that I have, but that's okay. If it takes 500 years for people to get my message and fix the problem, man, we'll have saved billions of people's lives, okay? And that's what we're all about. So if we understand that the obsession in a relationship is a direct cause of attraction, and that's what leads to loyalty, then we got to figure that out. What is it that causes women to become massively attracted with their man that would cause them to never, ever, ever leave him? And the man is also a good guy who doesn't beat her or force her to do what he wants her to do. Right? We need that dichotomy, or that scenery to function. In order for what? For kids, right? In order for the kids to grow up in harmonious homes so that they can go out there and now actually they were emotionally fulfilled. And as kids. And when they move out now and go into the world, guess what? They're going to emotionally fulfill everyone that comes in contact with them. That's what we need. We need kids that are emotionally fulfilled. And as a result of the big taxes that happen from big government, what happens is that women have to go into the workforce. And what is it that we neglect in order for us to have the short-term gains that we get from having 2 jobs or whatever it is that people are doing these days? You get stressed out lives, okay, that's one. The woman has to be rejected out there on a continual basis, making her masculine, burdened, which causes all sorts of problems on its own. But worst of all, we're neglecting the next generation. We're sending the next generation to who? Big government, okay? Minimum wage, basically teachers who just passed an education. Okay, for those of you guys who have been in college, know that there's not much education going on there. So these people are actually coming out, being teachers, and now they're raising your kids. And interestingly enough, very often it's 1 teacher per 20 students, or 30 students sometimes. If they're lucky, there's 2 teachers in that room with 30 students or 20 students, whatever it is. Do you think that your child is going to get the attention, love, and appreciation that they need? No, they're not going to. They're going to be hurt. They're going to be bullied very often if they're not part of the higher social hierarchy at school. And that's going to cause issues with their psyche, with their self-esteem for the rest of their lives very often, unless they've actually managed to fix it. But the problem is that as a child, as you grow up, you become a teenager, and then you create more problems for yourselves because of what happened in your childhood. Teenage pregnancies, weed, alcohol, parties, sexual whatever things that people do during their teenage years. It is a horrible aspect to creating abundance in their lives. A lot of people enter into addiction very quickly, right there in their teenage years. Not good for ending world poverty. How does that help, these kids to learn how to fish? Okay? And what we end up doing, these people that, I'm not saying that everyone suffers. There's a lot of people who complete school and are, great functioning citizens, etc. But we want everyone to be able to provide for themselves and to protect a family, right? For men to protect and provide for their families, for there to be attraction in that relationship, and for the next generation of kids to be absolutely amazing. Okay, so So we have that one. Wouldn't it be wonderful if women could trust men? But they don't. Why? Because in their teenage years, they get screwed over by those very men. And if it's not in their teenage years and it's in their 20s, how many people end up in a family never having been sexually involved or romantically involved with the man that didn't cause distrust in them as a woman? Right? How many women manage to go through their teenage years and 20s? And how many should? Right? Like, it's horrible for a woman to not be able to fulfill her needs with the man who's trustworthy and is going to stick with her for the long term. It's horrible. So basically what women do is that they do the next best thing, is that they find the best possible guy who desires them a little bit, and then they try to work it out, and the majority of the time it doesn't work out because she loses attraction for him because of basically the default nature of long-term relationships in monogamy. Okay? So we'll talk about that a little bit right now. Problem is, women don't trust men. For good reason. Men very often don't care, but the woman does. What does that mean? Well, in terms of the family, okay? Men are they're going out to work and then they come home and then they now have a second job together with the woman, but the second job involves having a boss. The woman is the boss in the home. Woman hates that, but she has to do it because she's the one who cares. And if she doesn't care, he's not going to care, and so the kids are going to get neglected. So it becomes a mess, okay? So in general, what happens is that both of them are drowning in lack of capacity. They don't have capacity to do both full-time jobs and then come home and take care of the kids. And the kids have suffered at school, which causes them to create a lot of issues in the home for the parents. And the parents don't know what to do because they don't know, where does this all come from? And it comes from their friends and from what happens at school, right? And so the parents have to spend all night, all evening fixing what has gone wrong at school, which is a problem. And then they also have to put food on the table, and you also have to clean. They also have to do this, that, and the other. And couples are drowning in lack of capacity. No wonder everyone believes, not everyone, but a lot of people believe that life is a bitch and then you die. Families need to function. You know, that's where you get the greatest joy, bliss, and happiness from, is a family when it's functioning, right? But a lot of the time it doesn't, okay? So we got to solve that. Remember, inherently, all people are good. So what do we need? How do we solve this problem? Imagine a world where the man was responsible. Imagine a world where the man was trustworthy. Imagine a world where a man actually used leadership skills, kind persuasion, to get to the land of the family's dream, right? So like the family has dreams, so guess what? The man, he's a leader, and he actually manages to bring that about because of his trustworthiness. He's never going to leave. He's always going to be there unconditionally, and he's going to provide and he's going to protect. Imagine if that was the case. Could we create a world where men have the motivation to protect and provide extremely well, to literally care about their women and about their children? If that was the case, then all families would function, right? If the man was a good guy and he was trustworthy and he did all those things that I just mentioned, one, there would be no need for government because he was protecting and providing extremely well. He would be defending. Of course, maybe there is some laws, there is some police, there's a judiciary system in order for it to, work when he's gone, or for them to get some extra protection from, people that have guns and more powerful than them, whatever, right? Okay, so that's good. We need some government there while things are kind of crazy still, right? But the government needs to be small so that we have overview over every single person who works in government to make sure that there's no lying, cheating, or, bribing and all that crap that happens, right? The bigger the government, the harder it is to know what's going on, right? So, but imagine if that man was actually doing his duty and fulfilling everything and making it work. We have a big problem though. Women are not attracted to their men in their long-term relationships, in marriage, in monogamy. The woman loses all forms of attraction. So the man loses what? Motivation. He loses purpose, he loses drive, and he gets fat. Okay? Maybe his wife gets fat too. But guess whose fault that was? It's the man's fault. We got a problem. Men are not motivated these days. Very often because women are extremely masculine, it's all men's fault, meaning women are burdened, so they're surviving, okay? They're all in survival mode. And men are also in survival mode because they're being nagged all the time at home, and or they don't want to get married at all, so they don't take on their responsibility of providing and protecting at all. And then we end up having kids who are struggling, and we get all the problems that we've got in today's world. What is the ultimate solution to end world poverty? The ultimate solution is to bring motivation back to men, okay? If we could make it so that women can simply enjoy the now and never, ever have to worry about work, never, ever have to worry about education that they're not interested in, okay? And never, ever be fearful that they're not going to have enough resources for them to survive. And the kids are able to just enjoy themselves. Women were designed to enjoy the now. Men were designed to make the now better. But they simply don't have the motivation to do so because the government is stripping them of all their rights, is stripping them of all their reasons to get married or committed for the long term, and making it extremely difficult. If you begin to look into what's happening with men these days and why they don't want to get married, okay? They're looking at female nature. They're looking at government. Female nature, very often, obviously, it's a reflection of them. It's not women's fault that they act the way they do. It's men's fault. However, when a man has screwed a woman over, the man is looking at her, ooh, I don't know. And then he looks over at the government and he's like, so if I commit to this woman, then the government will come and take me and take half my stuff, no matter what happens in that relationship. No matter if I make more, no matter if I make 20 times more, the woman gets still half of everything, etc., etc. Nothing wrong with that. A man should never get divorced, and it's his fault if he does get a divorce. The woman initiates 80% of the time. But do you get what I'm saying? We're trying to create some incentives for men to actually commit for the long term. What if I told you that there is a system that actually fixes all of that, so that men are actually motivated and fired up outside their brain to actually commit to women? But not only this, it actually solves the aspect of big government through the vote, and it also solves protection and provision for everyone who is under that man's influence. And he must be a good guy, he must be trustworthy, he must be responsible, etc., etc. Yeah, but how are you going to make men trustworthy and responsible? That's ridiculous. Most men suck. I agree, okay? So we got to find a way to actually tie women up to a high-value man, okay? Or connect. Okay, that's the right word. To a high-value man so that it can work, right? We don't want women to be connected to low-value men. And there's a lot of low-value men. If you just took all men and connected them to all women, we'd have a lot of mismatches, okay? But the biggest problems is that the worst 30% of men would literally have a woman, okay? That's not good. If you look at the bottom 30% of men, they don't deserve women in their current state. They're not motivated, they don't care, they drink, they fight, they do this, that, and the other, and they lie, and they cheat, and they do... We don't want the scum of the earth to get women at this point in time, because they will then have kids. And as they have kids, then basically we're going to just perpetuate this for generations, right? We need trustworthy men who are honorable, who are respected, who actually create wealth and are fired up about creating more wealth, and who have the correct mindset to make things work and to be successful. Who will be responsible, right? What if we connected more women to the same trustworthy, high-value man, instead of having women connected to the bad guys and the low-value guys. Wouldn't it be better if some women, if not all, were connected to... Okay, so you got one man. Let's just choose an example. Well, what do we teach on my channel? 3 in love. Let's say 3 women was connected to one man. What would happen? He's trustworthy, he's honorable, he's respectful, etc., etc. How did he become that? Well, there needs to be a system in place where that man receives a stamp of approval from a network of other high-value men so that he has a track record of never, ever leaving women, never, ever treating them bad, okay? And always being committed to his ability to provide resources and improving and getting better and provide well and protect well for his family, right? If he had that stamp of approval, why not? Well, we've got an obstacle because women these days, they're like, oh, sharing a man? No, I can't do that. Okay, I understand that. I recognize that. And that mindset comes from the aspect of having scarcity in your relationships with men or the relationships in men you've had in the past. And you're trying to basically look, no, your very foundation, your core foundation of your femininity is to have the security of never being left behind. For you, you believe that if you share your high-value man with your best friends, okay, well, let's imagine that they are your best friends. So you're actually sharing them, but you are together, spending time together, living under the same household, making sure that it's harmonious. It's the man's fault if it's not, because then he's basically making it unequal and maybe one of them feels left behind. That's not good. That's not okay. If a man is trustworthy, he'll actually make sure that the women are equal with each other. But how does this how does this solve what we're talking about here? Poverty. Okay, in 2 huge ways. The man is motivated outside his brain to keep this relationship alive. Women, because of feminism, fantastic, are now allowed to leave. Great. We need to have to allow women to exit this type of relationship if the man is not keeping up his end of the bargain, right? Great. I love that. Because it's up to the man to make sure that they stick around. How does he do that? By making sure that they're obsessed with him and attracted to him in such a way that they want to stay naturally. And he should not be allowed to do anything that mistreats them in any way. Then, in my opinion, they should leave. Okay? Why should he deserve to have 3 women if he sucks? There's plenty of other men who desire 3 women, so let them compete. Okay? What happens on a societal basis? Well, guess what? You'll have 1/3 of men having women, all women, and 2/3 of men not having any women. Now, if you think, oh, there will be a lot of upheaval and violence and riots because those men don't have women, bro, or sis, you know that those men, those high-value men, could easily kick 2 guys' asses. Okay, like, do you get what I'm saying? Like, this one man to every 2 guys that doesn't have women. One man has a woman, 2 guys don't. He could kick those 2 asses. Easily. Okay, so that's not a problem. That's not a worry. What would actually happen with men who don't have women? Well, they wouldn't be prostitution, interestingly enough, because prostitution is solved. Women are now in relationships with one man, right? So we've solved that. All women and children are provided for. All of them. All of them. There's no women that grow old and live on the street. I see old women living on the street all the time. That would be solved in the 3 in Love society. It wouldn't exist. Okay? Now, the next 50 years, 100 years, maybe it would. But over time, it wouldn't exist. What would happen? Well, those 2/3 of men would be massively desirous to be in the same situation as the guy that does have 3 women. So they would be massively motivated to produce, to serve and to produce for everyone else so that they could develop their own leadership and their own ability to provide and to protect so that they can qualify eventually to have 3 women of their own. Right? So we'd have 1/3 of men massively motivated, and then 2/3 of men probably massively motivated, and then there'll probably some homosexuals who take care of each other's needs there, whatever, and then there would be less government. There's no need for government if everyone's provided for. Guess what? Men don't care that much if they don't have someone that, that men don't care in general, unless they have someone that they love and they want to provide for them. And then they produce massively more than they need so that they can provide for the women and children in their lives, right? Very often, if they're good guys, they would do that. But if they're guys who are ignorant or uninformed on the ways of happiness, okay, then they're not going to care as much, which means that they're only going to care about their own survival if they don't want to have 3 in love in the future. Which means that they're going to produce, but they're not going to produce as much. No problem. It's perfect. Okay? Because they don't want it. It doesn't affect anyone. Right? It doesn't affect women and children in his life because he doesn't have any. This is how we, over time, can solve the massive, huge problem of hundreds of millions of people in poverty. We elevate women's value in everyone's eyes. Okay? The cool part about it is that the most handsome and most powerful men would be the ones who reproduce. So over time, as evolution continues, survival of the fittest would actually work. Okay, now obviously, there's no violence. There shouldn't be any violence. There shouldn't be any fighting and whatever, all that stuff. And there wouldn't be, because there would be, in many ways, order. But all of this stuff would be done voluntarily. You don't have to force anyone. Good ideas don't require force. And guess what? This is a flippin' good idea. Because it's based on the male and female dynamics of how things work. Women were designed to see their man be desired by other women. They hate that feeling if they feel unequal. But if they feel equal, then it's amazing. Okay? So, how did we solve poverty? Well, there's no women and children who are without resources, are there? Nope. They're all protected. Yep. There's no... yes, the government. What do we do with the government? How do we decrease their powers? Because they have a lot of power. And guess what? Governments very often are against the types of lifestyle that I suggest, aren't they? Well, that's the problem, because that's the solution. Government is a problem, and 3 in love is a solution. What do? Well, we got to limit the government's power. How do we do that? We got to vote. We got to use our vote. That's the only way we can do it peacefully, right? And I'm all for peace. I want to create peace on earth. You can never get to peace on earth with war. You have to get to peace on earth with peace. Okay? That's the process. And how do you do that? You use the vote. How do you decrease government? You don't vote for the parties that are at the top. You vote for libertarianism. That's the only way to go about it. Why? Because libertarianism, libertarians are the only ones who believe in limited government. Okay? Sometimes they disagree with each other. We got to come to a point where they unify on their core message to limit government's powers. Man, we can reduce 80% to 95% of the government's expenditures. In Norway, military spends 5% of all of the taxes that are gathered in. 5% of them are used on the essentials that I mentioned today. Police, judiciary, and the military. In America, it's 18% or whatever it was. Okay? How about we reduce that? Like we reduce everything else except for that, so that there can remain order and we can make sure that we're protected from outside enemies. All of that money would go back into the private sector, back into your husband's pockets, and guess what? You would thrive, and you as a woman wouldn't have to work. This is the solution, in my opinion. I'm fired up outside my brain. I love the stuff that I teach. I hope you do too. If you do, make sure you subscribe and like this video. And I'll check out the comments real quick. If you guys have any good ones, we'll try and reply. Build a man a fire, keep him warm for a day. Set him on fire, keep him warm for the rest of his life. Lol. Let's see. All right. Fantastic. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.